Tonight, federal agents have arrested a sitting judge in what prosecutors are calling the largest judicial corruption case in American history.
4:23 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. The air was still. The city slept under a blanket of early winter frost. Ice covered the windows of parked cars along South Hennepin Avenue, but federal agents were already moving. 3 black SUVs rolled silently through the deserted streets. No lights, no sirens. Inside, 18 tactical officers from the FBI and ICE checked their weapons one final time. They weren't headed to a warehouse. They weren't chasing gangsters in the night, and they were parked outside the office of a sitting immigration judge. For 19 months, data analysts in Washington had been tracking something impossible, a pattern so statistically absurd it could only mean one thing: corruption at the highest level. Every asylum case that landed in courtroom 7B ended the same way: approval, rubber stamped, no questions asked. The rejection rate in Judge Layla Mahad's court was 4%. The national average was 67%. Something was very, very wrong. If you want the full truth about what happened next, hit like so this story reaches more people. The judge they were coming for wasn't just bending the rules. She had sold the entire immigration system to the highest bidder. And the buyers weren't desperate families fleeing violence. They were cartel operatives, human traffickers, convicted felons with deportation orders. They paid $18,000 per case, cash, cryptocurrency, offshore wire transfers. Over 8 years, Judge Mahad had personally approved 2,847 fraudulent asylum claims. She had flooded American cities with criminals, all for profit. Alpha Team confirms position. Bravo holding perimeter. Charlie has eyes on rear exit. The radio chatter was minimal, professional, cold. Inside the lead vehicle, Special Agent Marcus Dillon reviewed the warrant one last time. It listed 14 federal charges: racketeering, conspiracy, bribery, fraud, and the most damning of all, obstruction of justice resulting in death, because 3 of the people Judge Mahad had released went on to commit murder. Control to all units. Execute. The battering ram hit the reinforced glass door with a sound like thunder splitting stone. Shards exploded inward. Agents poured through the breach. Federal agents. Search warrant. Hands where we can see them. The building was empty. No security guard. No cleaning crew. Judge Mahad wasn't there, but her office was. And what agents found inside would expose a conspiracy that reached from Minnesota to Matamoros, from courtrooms to cartel compounds, from the American dream to a nightmare built on lies. The mahogany desk was pristine, files stacked neatly. An American flag stood in the corner beside a framed photo of Mahad shaking hands with the governor. But behind the bookshelf, agents found a wall safe. It took 14 minutes to crack. When the steel door swung open, the room went silent. Inside were bundles of cash, $340,000 in used bills, rubber banded in stacks of 10,000. Beside the money sat 3 prepaid phones, encrypted messaging apps, burner devices used to communicate with smugglers, and at the bottom of the safe, a black ledger. It wasn't just a record of bribes. It was a menu, case number, defendant names, payment amounts, methods of transfer, dates of approval. This wasn't corruption, this was a business. Comment exposed below if you think she should never see freedom again. 5:47 a.m. The second team breached Judge Mahad's residence in Edina, a $2.3 million home in one of the wealthiest suburbs in Minnesota. Her official salary was $178,000 per year. She couldn't afford this house. Agents found her in a master bedroom, sitting calmly on the edge of the bed, a laptop open in front of her. She had been deleting files, hands behind your head. Now, she didn't resist, didn't speak, just stared at the agents with cold, calculating eyes. The forensic team seized the laptop. The hard drive showed evidence of mass deletion, but the FBI's digital recovery unit was already on it. They would retrieve every byte. In the walk-in closet, agents found designer clothes: Gucci, Prada, Valentino, shoes worth thousands of dollars each, jewelry that sparkled under the overhead lights, and hidden behind a false panel in the closet floor, another safe. This one contained passports, 4 of them, different names, different nationalities. One was Somali, one was Mexican, one was Canadian. All had her face. She had been preparing to run, but it was too late. Simultaneously, teams hit 4 other locations across the Twin Cities: the home of court clerk Hassan Osman, the office of immigration attorney Gabriela Ruiz, a luxury condo in downtown Minneapolis registered to a shell company, and a storage unit in Brooklyn Park. The operation was surgical, coordinated, devastating. At the storage unit, agents found filing cabinets stuffed with documents, fake birth certificates, forged employment records, fraudulent lease agreement, everything needed to manufacture a convincing asylum case. And in the back corner, 127 kilograms of fentanyl. The drugs weren't there by accident. This wasn't just immigration fraud. It was a full-spectrum cartel operation. human trafficking, drug smuggling, money laundering, all facilitated by a federal judge. The scale was staggering. For 8 years, Mahad had operated with impunity. She had turned courtroom 7B into a revolving door. Cartel members walked in as defendants. They walked out as legal residents, but the FBI had been watching, quietly, patiently. If this shocks you, hit like now. The investigation began with a tip. A whistleblower inside the immigration court system. A paralegal who noticed the patterns. Cases approved in minutes, no evidence reviewed, no testimony challenged. She reported it to the Office of Professional Responsibility. They dismissed it, so she went to the FBI. Special Agent Dillon took the case. He assembled a task force, analysts, forensic accountants, surveillance team. They started pulling records, court transcripts, financial statements, travel logs. The data was undeniable. In a single year, Judge Mahad had approved 417 asylum cases. The average judge approves 120. And of those 417 cases, 91% involved applicants from countries with known cartel activity. Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. These weren't refugees, they were operators. Dillon's team began tracking the approved applicants, where they went after leaving court, what they did, who they contacted. The results were horrifying. 73 of the approved applicants had criminal records in their home countries: assault, robbery, drug trafficking. One was wanted for murder, another had been deported 3 times. Judge Mahad knew. She approved them anyway. The financial investigation revealed the mechanism. Shell companies registered in Delaware, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, cryptocurrency wallets holding millions in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Payments came in through a network of intermediaries, a lawyer in San Diego, a bail bondsman in Phoenix, a real estate broker in Houston, all connected to cartel financiers. The money flowed to Mahad through invoices labeled as consulting fees, legal research, expert testimony, all fake. Over 8 years, she had received $51.3 million. Type yes if you're ready to see how deep this network went. The ledger found in her office safe was the smoking gun, but it was also a map. It listed names, dozens of them, lawyers, clerks, border patrol officers, ICE agents, politicians. This wasn't one corrupt judge. This was a system. Agents cross-referenced the names with federal databases. The connections were immediate. Court clerk Hassan Osman had processed 84% of Mahad's cases. He expedited paperwork, lost files that documented criminal histories, scheduled hearings on days when federal prosecutors were unavailable. He was paid $7,000 per case. Immigration attorney Gabriela Ruiz represented 63% of Mahad's approved clients. She filed motions with zero evidence, submitted forged documents, coached clients to lie under oath. She received $15,000 per approval. But the most shocking name on the list was Border Patrol Supervisor Daniel Ortega. He worked at the Hidalgo Port of Entry in Texas. For 3 years, he had been flagging specific vehicles for expedited processing. No inspections, no questions. Those vehicles were filled with cartel members and fentanyl. Ortega was paid $50,000 per month. The conspiracy reached into 5 states: Minnesota, Texas, California, Arizona, Illinois. It involved 34 individuals, judges, lawyers, federal agents, clerks, elected officials. They had built a pipeline from cartel territories in Mexico to American cities, from courtrooms to communities. And Judge Mahad was the architect. The FBI expanded the operation: wiretaps, surveillance, undercover agents. They monitored communications, tracked movements, built an airtight case. On November 14, 2025, the order came from Washington: execute 18 simultaneous raids across 5 states, 127 federal agents, 9 SWAT teams. The largest coordinated takedown of judicial corruption in American history. Comment justice below if you believe this is what accountability looks like. The evidence seized during the raids filled an entire warehouse: 47 boxes of documents, 19 laptops, 83 phones, 12 external hard drives, and $4.7 million in cash. Forensic analysts began the painstaking work of reconstruction: deleted emails, encrypted messages, financial transactions routed through dozens of shell companies. The digital trail revealed the full scope. Judge Mahad had been recruited by the Gulf Cartel in 2016. A lawyer connected to cartel operations approached her at a legal conference in San Antonio. The pitch was simple: approve our cases, get rich, no one will know. She said yes. The first payment was $200,000, transferred through a consulting firm in Panama. She used it to buy her house in Adena. After that, the payments became routine: monthly deposits, cryptocurrency transfers, cash deliveries to her office disguised as legal fees. She wasn't working for the cartel. She was a partner. The case files told a darker story. Among the 2,847 fraudulent approvals were individuals who went on to commit heinous crimes. Miguel Herrera, approved in 2019, arrested for operating a fentanyl distribution ring in St. Paul. His drugs killed 14 people in 6 months. Carlos Medina, approved in 2020, convicted of human trafficking. He enslaved 23 women in a brothel disguised as a massage parlor. And Antonio Ruiz, approved in 2021, he murdered a federal witness scheduled to testify against cartel leaders in Chicago. Judge Mahad had blood on her hands. The trial began in March 2026. The prosecution presented 1,400 pieces of evidence: the ledger, the bank record, the wiretaps, the testimony of cooperating witnesses. Mahad's defense argued entrapment, claimed she was coerced, said the cartel threatened her family. The jury didn't believe it. They saw the luxury cars, the private jet trips to Dubai and Monaco, the offshore accounts. This wasn't coercion. This was greed. On May 8, 2026, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all 14 counts. Share this so more people understand how deep corruption can go. The sentencing hearing was packed. Families of victims filled the gallery. They had waited years for justice. One mother stood and spoke. Her son died from a fentanyl overdose. The dealer was a man Judge Mahad had approved. She looked directly at Mahad and said, "You killed him. You killed them all." Mahad stared at the floor, silent, emotionless. The federal judge presiding over the case delivered a statement that echoed through the courtroom. "You were sworn to uphold the law. You were given power to protect the vulnerable. Instead, you sold that power to criminals. You turned justice into a transaction. You betrayed your oath. You betrayed your country." Judge Layla Mahad was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. Court clerk Hassan Osman received 18 years. Attorney Gabriela Ruiz received 22 years. Border Patrol Supervisor Daniel Ortega received 25 years. In total, 34 individuals were convicted. The Gulf Cartel's immigration pipeline was dismantled, but the damage was done. 2,147 fraudulent approvals. Thousands of criminals granted legal status. Drugs flooded into American communities, lives destroyed, families shattered. The systemic rot had spread too far. Federal investigators continued to track the approved applicants. As of January 2026, 418 had been located and rearrested. Deportation proceedings were initiated, but 2,429 remain at large, somewhere in America, living under false identities. The FBI issued public alerts. ICE launched a nationwide manhunt. But finding them is like searching for ghosts. They vanished into the system Judge Mahad helped them infiltrate. If you believe justice is worth fighting for, comment accountability below. The case exposed a terrifying vulnerability. The immigration system relies on trust. Trust that judges will follow the law. Trust that lawyers will act ethically. Trust that federal agents will do their duty. When that trust is broken, the entire system collapses. Judge Mahad wasn't an anomaly. She was a symptom of a system stretched too thin, overwhelmed by case volume, underfunded, understaffed, vulnerable to exploitation. The cartels knew this. They studied the weaknesses, they identified the choke point, and they bought their way through. How many other judges are on the payroll? How many other courts have been compromised? How many other cartel operatives are walking free because someone sold their oath for cash? We don't know, and that's the most terrifying part. The Department of Justice launched an internal review. 94 federal immigration judges were subjected to financial audits. Court records were analyzed for statistical anomalies. Travel logs were scrutinized. 3 additional judges were placed under investigation, 1 in California, 1 in Arizona, 1 in Texas. The rot runs deeper than anyone thought. Congress held hearings. Lawmakers demanded accountability. Reforms were proposed, increased oversight, mandatory financial disclosures, random audits of court decisions. But laws are only as strong as the people who enforce them. And if those people can be bought, no law will stop the corruption. Hit subscribe so you don't miss updates on this investigation. The families of victims continue to fight. They filed civil lawsuits against Judge Mahad, against the court system, against the Department of Justice. They argue the government failed to protect them. They're right. The system failed. It failed to detect the corruption. It failed to stop the criminals. It failed to prevent the deaths. And now families are left to pick up the pieces. One father lost his daughter to a fentanyl overdose. The dealer was a man Judge Mahad approved. He said, "She trusted the system. She believed judges were honest. That trust killed her." Another mother's son was murdered by Antonio Ruiz, the killer Mahad set free. She said, "Every night I see his face. I see him begging for his life. And I know a judge made that possible." These aren't statistics. These are human lives, destroyed by greed, destroyed by betrayal. The cost of corruption isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in coffins. Judge Mahad will spend the rest of her life in prison. But that doesn't bring back the dead. It doesn't heal the families. It doesn't undo the damage. It's justice, but it's not enough. The Gulf Cartel continues to operate. They lost their pipeline in Minnesota, but they're building new ones. New judges, new lawyers, new agents. The war isn't over. Federal agents are still tracking leads, still investigating, still arresting cartel operatives. In December 2025, ICE arrested 73 individuals approved by Judge Mahad. They were operating drug distribution networks in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth. In January 2026, Border Patrol intercepted a convoy near Laredo. Inside were 14 individuals with fraudulent asylum papers, all linked to Mahad's network. The system is fighting back, but the cartels are adapting. Comment vigilance if you believe we must stay alert. This case should terrify every American. It proves that corruption can reach the highest levels of government. It proves that the people sworn to protect us can be bought. And it proves that the cartels are playing a long game. They don't just smuggle drugs, they smuggle people. They infiltrate institutions. They buy influence. They corrupt the system from within. And when they succeed, the damage is catastrophic. Judge Mahad sold her oath for $51.3 million. She sold justice. She sold safety. She sold American lives. And for 8 years, no one stopped her. That should keep you awake at night. Because if it happened in Minnesota, it can happen anywhere. If a federal judge can be corrupted, anyone can be corrupted. The system is only as strong as its weakest link. And the cartels are experts at finding weakness. They study our laws, they exploit our vulnerabilities, they infiltrate our institutions, and they wait. They wait for someone to say yes, someone to take the money, someone to look the other way. And when that happens, the system breaks. The question isn't whether more judges are compromised. The question is how many. The FBI is investigating, but investigations take time. And while they investigate, cartel operatives walk free. How many are in your city? How many are in your neighborhood? How many were approved by corrupt judges? We don't know. And that uncertainty is the cartel's greatest weapon. If you think this investigation matters, share this video before it's buried. Judge Mahad's case is a warning that the war on drugs isn't just fought on the border. It's fought in courtrooms, in offices, in the institutions we trust. And when those institutions are corrupted, we all lose. The American justice system is supposed to be incorruptible, blind, fair, impartial. But Judge Mahad proved that's a myth. Justice can be bought, and when it is, the consequences are deadly. The families of victims understand this better than anyone. They trusted the system. They believed judges would uphold the law. They believed criminals would be punished. That trust was shattered, and now they're left with nothing but grief and rage. One victim's father said, "I used to believe in justice. I used to believe the system worked. Now I know it's broken, and I don't know if it can be fixed." That's the real tragedy. Not just the deaths, not just the drugs, but the loss of faith. When people stop believing in justice, society collapses. Law and order depend on trust. When that trust is gone, chaos follows. Judge Mahad didn't just break the law, she broke the foundation of civil society, and the cracks are spreading. The Department of Justice promised reforms, promised accountability, promised this would never happen again. But promises don't stop corruption. Action does. And so far, the action has been too little, too late. 3 more judges under investigation. How many more will it take before the system is cleaned out? How many more victims before the problem is fixed? The answer should be 0. But we both know that's not realistic. Hit like if you believe justice is worth fighting for. The Gulf Cartel is watching. They're watching the investigations. They're watching the trials. They're watching the reforms. And they're adapting. They're finding new judges, new lawyers, new agents, new ways to infiltrate the system. Because for them, this is business, and business is good. The cartels generate $500 billion annually. They have resources that rival nation-states. They have networks that span continents. They have patience that outlasts any administration, and they will never stop. The only question is whether we have the will to fight back. Judge Mahad's conviction is a victory, but it's one battle in a war that's far from over. The cartels are still operating. The pipeline is still open. The drugs are still flowing. And somewhere, another judge is being approached. Another lawyer is being recruited. Another agent is being offered cash. The war continues, and the price of failure is measured in lives. Comment "Fight back" if you believe we must never stop pursuing justice. So what happens next? The FBI continues to investigate. ICE continues to track down the individuals Mahad approved. The Department of Justice continues to reform the immigration court system. But the work is slow, and the cartels are fast. For every operative arrested, 2 more slip through. For every corrupt judge exposed, another is recruited. This is the reality of the war on drugs. It's not a war that can be won with one raid, one conviction, one reform. It's a war of attrition, a war of vigilance, a war that demands constant attention and relentless effort. And it's a war that will define the future of American security. Because if we can't protect our courts, we can't protect anything. Judge Mahad's case is a wake-up call, a reminder that corruption is real, that the cartels are here, that the fight is far from over. The question is whether we're listening, whether we're willing to demand accountability, whether we're willing to support the agents and investigators fighting this war, whether we're willing to stay vigilant, because the moment we look away, the cartels win. And the cost of that victory is too high to bear. If you believe this story needs to be heard, share it now. The agents who brought down Judge Mahad's network are heroes. They spent 19 months building the case. They risked their careers. They endured threats. They worked in silence while the corruption continued. And when the time came, they executed flawlessly. They deserve recognition. They deserve support. They deserve to know that the American people stand behind them. Because without them, Judge Mahad would still be sitting on the bench, still approving fraudulent cases, still lining her pockets with cartel money. They stopped her, and they're stopping others. But they can't do it alone. They need resources. They need funding. They need political support. And they need the American people to stay engaged, to demand accountability, to demand transparency, to demand justice. This isn't a partisan issue. This isn't about left or right. This is about right and wrong. And what Judge Mahad did was wrong. She betrayed her oath. She betrayed her country. She betrayed every American who believed in justice. And she must never be allowed to do it again. 40 years in prison. That's the sentence. But is it enough? She destroyed lives. She facilitated murders. She flooded communities with poison. Some argue she should have received life. Others argue she should face the death penalty. The debate will continue, but one thing is certain. She will never sit on a bench again. She will never hold power again. She will spend the rest of her life behind bars. And that has to be enough, because the fight isn't over. There are more judges to investigate, more cases to prosecute, more cartels to dismantle. The work continues. Subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next. The story of Judge Layla Mahad is a tragedy of greed, a tragedy of corruption, a tragedy of broken trust. But it's also a story of resilience, of agents who refused to give up, of whistleblowers who risked everything, of families who demanded justice. And in the end, justice prevailed. Not perfectly, not completely, but it prevailed. And that has to mean something. It has to mean that the system, as broken as it is, can still work. And that corruption, as deep as it runs, can still be exposed. That criminals, as powerful as they are, can still be held accountable. It has to mean that the fight is worth it. Because if we stop fighting, the cartels win. If we stop demanding accountability, corruption spreads. If we stop believing in justice, society collapses. We can't let that happen. The families of victims are counting on us. The agents fighting this war are counting on us. The future of American security is counting on us. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay engaged. We have to stay committed, because this is only the beginning. More investigations are underway. More arrests are coming. More corruption will be exposed. And when it is, we have to be ready. Ready to demand justice. Ready to support the fight. Ready to hold the powerful accountable. That's the lesson of Judge Mahad's case. That corruption thrives in silence, and it dies in the light. So let's shine the light. Let's expose the rot. Let's demand better, because we deserve better. Our communities deserve better. Our country deserves better. And the agents fighting this war deserve to know we stand with them. If you believe justice matters, comment "Stand with Justice" below. If you believe accountability is essential, hit like now. If you believe this story needs to reach more people, share it everywhere. And if you believe the fight must continue, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because the war isn't over. The cartels are still operating. The corruption is still spreading. But as long as there are agents willing to fight and citizens willing to demand accountability, there is hope. Hope that justice will prevail. Hope that corruption will be exposed. Hope that the system can be fixed. That hope is fragile, but it's real, and it's worth fighting for. This is only the beginning. Stay vigilant, stay informed, stay engaged. The fight continues.